Hey listeners, just a couple of quick announcements before I roll into the next episode. The Running Guide podcast is now with Patreon. Patreon is a bit of a support system that works both ways between creators and listeners. Some of you may be familiar with it. Just trying to build a little bit more of a community around this podcast and find out what you guys would like to see more of to keep improving the quality of the show and get involved with questions and the rest. So just check it out, the show notes. There will be a link over to that, and there'll also be another link over to my Running Guide podcast singlets that I'm now printing up. I've got a dozen here, and I've got a couple of dozen turning up the next couple of weeks, or actually next week. So follow that link over to the website, check it out, see if you like the design. Pretty good quality singlet. I've actually been wearing it for years in training and racing, so that's why I'm getting this company to make them up for the podcast. So get involved with Patreon. It'd be very, very much appreciated. And if you like the look of a singlet, grab one, and I'll get it out to you as soon as possible. All right, thanks guys. Thanks for listening, and let's roll with the next one. Welcome listeners to episode 26 of the Running Guide podcast, where I aim to provide informative content and interviews with elite athletes and health professionals around the world, like in today's episode, where I'm chatting to an elite runner, exercise physiologist, high performance manager, coach and mentor, who has been employed as a sports physiologist at the AIS for the last 19 years, and he's always working behind the scenes as well as coaching some of the best Australian distance runners. Welcome to the Running Guide podcast, Dr. Philo Saunders.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
No, really been looking forward to getting you on, mate. Certainly been on the list there for a while, so thank you very much for giving up some of your time.
Oh, good.
Mate, we're pretty lucky here in Canberra. We've still got some running events going, and the old annual Sri Shim 900k trail race was on last weekend. I saw you guys put in a solid team performance once again, taking it out.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's always good. I think that's the third time I've done it, but probably 2014 was the last time I did it.
Okay, you're right, yeah.
So yeah, we put two teams in. We had a mixed team in our team with Keely, and then an all-male team. Tried to make them reasonably even, a bit of competition within the group.
Yeah, okay.
And our team got up by a few minutes, which was good. I think we finished second overall and won the mixed category.
Yeah.
Took the squad bragging rights. That was good. That was me, Keely, Dion Kenzie, and Bryce Anderson. So that was good. Good day out. I think the legs average 25. Some are a little bit shorter, some are a bit longer.
Yeah.
And pretty much tries to get every hill that it can in Canberra.
I think it covers about 2,500 metres in total. And it's solid running for sure. Definitely.
There's a few sore bodies the next week.
Oh, I bet, mate. I bet.
Everyone's backing up for the high noon meet on Sunday tomorrow. Or not everyone, but a lot of us are. So that'll be good.
Yep, that's the last one of the year.
Yeah, and last high noon, but then we pretty much go straight into summer series, which starts up again, but more of a Saturday rather than Sunday.
Yep.
So it'll be good. It's good to have some comps back again. I suppose there's a long period where I was just training and not really knowing what was coming up, but Canberra's pretty good at the moment. Lots of trail races, a few road races coming back, and the track races are starting to come back on too, which is good.
No, we've been very lucky, and loving the spring weather we're starting to get at the moment. The days are getting a bit longer, so it makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, it's always nice to have shorts and t-shirts rather than tights and jacket and gloves and everything else. So Canberra winter's all right. Like the days are usually pretty still, and you pick your times, you can get some pretty good training weather. We've all got a lot of good work in, and I suppose the one thing with all the restrictions is we've been able to just bunker down and get a real solid base. So we've got a lot of people that are really fit at the moment, which is good.
Yep, that's fantastic. I'll certainly be talking about the crew soon, but sort of, I'm keen to get into all that and the nitty-gritty of sort of sports research. But how about back to you when you started running? How and why did you get into running, and then what led you down the field of sports science and exercise physiology?
Yeah, so I suppose it all intertwines a bit. But I think we were talking before we started the interview. I played all sports. Just love sports. Played Aussie rules. Played cricket. Always did well at athletics, cross country, all of that. And I suppose it was just through the school sport that I did really well. Would always win the 1500, 800, and I think, one of the guys just in the local running club said, why don't I come down and train with this coach in Ararat, Kevin Maple? So I started training with him, and yeah, that's probably where it all started. We sort of, developed quite a good squad there. Mark Thompson, who you probably heard of, was a 13:36 guy. Paul Fenn, who made a World Juniors, and good runner.
Yep.
We all sort of trained together. Some older runners as well. I used to run on the Otway Classics, and yeah, it was just a real good culture. I really enjoyed it. I really like trying to improve and do my best. Started medaling at state champs, making nationals, that type of thing. And away I went, I suppose. So through high school, early on, 1500 was probably my event, and it probably has been all through my career. So, just tried to focus on being the best 1500 meter runner I could be, which means, lots of different types of training. So, obviously, your aerobic conditioning, your speed work, your interval training, and sort of progressed from there. I suppose, I I grew up in Stawell, country Victoria.
Okay.
Stawell Gift, I suppose it's famous for. So I suppose everyone sort of thinks you got running because of the Stawell Gift, but it probably wasn't. It was just, through love of running. Always like watching it at the Olympics, and just wanted to be good. And when I finished high school, I moved to Melbourne. So I did university at RMIT. And got into sports science there. But I suppose it was always, I wanted to be the best runner I could be. So, sports science was a way to learn a bit more, be involved with sport. And I joined up with a group in Doncaster. Tom Kelly, the late Tom Kelly, he passed away a few years ago. It's pretty sad. But, he always had a lot of runners who I was competing against when I grew up in Stawell, and admired the way they sort of ran. So I sort of contacted Tom just through, one of the state championship meets, and said that, I was welcome to come along and train with him. Paul Cleary was there at the time, Joe Ishia, Australian representatives, Mark Fountain trained there as well. He's a little bit younger than me, but came through. It was a really good training group, kept progressing.
And that was just always 8 and 15s, or?
I ran 5Ks.
Mm.
It was a pretty good time in athletics. So we used to have every Thursday night, it was called State League. So it was like the A grade where all the clubs would compete against each other, and it was real healthy competition. And like the clubs tried to get their best team and score as many points every week. So and I ran whatever I could help Doncaster do the best. So obviously, I'd always run the 1500. I'd always run the 800, but I'd run the 5K. I'd run the 4x4. It was just really good competition. Kept improving. After I finished my undergrad, I went to the US for 18 months on a scholarship over there. So a few of the guys I trained with had been there, and University of San Antonio, Texas San Antonio, offered me a full scholarship to go over. I thought it was just a good opportunity for something different, just to see what college racing was like, see what the training was like. And it was good. South Lane Conference wasn't the strongest conference. I think I won a mile and a 1500 championships there, conference title. And it was good. It was just good racing. So pretty much just raced the 800, 1500, the odd 4x4. But I think it was really good just to see another way of just racing, trying to learn how to race better, put all that training together. So I found, it was really good.
It's pretty famous for sort of racing for your team, isn't it? That sort of mentality, yeah.
Yeah, it is. And that real sort of like collegiality about trying to do well for the college, and really well supported. So,
Yep.
You get packed. I remember doing Texas relays with packed football stadiums to watch, and it's pretty inspiring to be able to run in that sort of like big stadium with crowds. And you always step up an extra gear when you've got, you're supportive, and like everyone wants you to do the best you can. So
yeah. Were there any other Aussies there good when you were there?
There was a guy, Tim Wallace. So it was like there was a family of probably 4 of them: Trent, Tim, Anthony. They were all good junior runners. So Tim was over there the same time. Mike Powell was actually over at Arkansas when I was there. So
So what
he's
year?
about
What
my
year is
age.
this?
98, 99.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep.
yeah, and that was really good. And I came back. I thought they wanted me to stay longer, but I thought I better go back and do my honours and sort of see where I want to go profession-wise. So I got like a scholarship to do honours at Melbourne Uni in exercise physiology with Mark Fabreo. And it was probably more of a research-orientated honours. I did sort of investigated carbohydrate metabolism in exercise in the heat. So yeah, it was good. We did muscle biopsies, did a lot of like biochemistry analysis. But it sort of wasn't what I really wanted to do, work at the university in research. But during that time, they started up this scheme in Canberra, the AIS, sports-based PhD scholarships, and I thought that was like perfect opportunity. So I applied for that. I was lucky enough to get accepted for the distance running scholarship, and yeah, worked in the AIS with Dick Telford. So like I trained with his group. He was one of my supervisors for my research. And yeah, I've sort of never looked back from there. Been in Canberra ever since. And I suppose that's where I sort of progressed as a sports scientist, as an athlete, and eventually as a coach, sort of all intertwined and just rolled on. So still going from there.
Yeah, awesome. Mate, I'm just going to run through some of your PBs just to get the listeners up. 800 metres, 1:49.90. That was here in Canberra in March 04.
Yep.
You ran 1,000.
Was ACT champs.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. At the AIS, yeah.
Yep.
1,000 metres, 2:28.05 in Melbourne, June 2010.
Yeah, it's probably the only 1,000 I ever raced. I think I did about 2:22 on a time trial, but yeah. That's what's listed down there. So yeah.
1,500, you got 3:41.22 in February 05 down in Melbourne.
Yep, that was at the Track Classic in Melbourne. So yeah, pretty memorable years, those ones.
Okay.
04, 05, sort of around that time. Sort of one of the better runners in Australia, and like really sort of, I suppose, stepped up to the level I wanted to be at. I suppose was always knocking on the door, running.
Yeah.
I suppose like high 340s, and yeah, those couple of seasons really stepped it down and was competitive at nationals. And
I was going to say, where were those times placing you at nationals, like the 341 in 05?
So fourth was my best finish.
Okay.
But I was, I think, 0.2 off the win, 0.2 or 0.3. It was like real close 05.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, so I finished fourth, fifth a number of times. This year would have been my 21st straight Open 15 national, so but it got cancelled.
Okay. Yeah.
So of those 20, I made 10 finals.
Yeah.
And finished fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. Like always been sort of around the mark. Never quite cracked the podium. I think 05 was sort of the year. Well, 04 I was sort of in third place to 80 to go, and then Michael Shelley came past me. And then 05 I just got real bad position. I think I ran 66 seconds for the last 500, but was just sort of too far back. Like hit the lead down the back straight, but just sort of probably spent a bit too much to get to that position.
Yeah. Okay.
Really enjoyed those years trying to do as well as I could. Sort of on the verge of making teams, and had a really good group in Canberra that sort of fed off each other.
Yep. Fantastic. 1 mile, mate. How many times did you have a serious crack at that? You got pretty close. Did you have a few cracks?
Never when I was like running 341s consistently.
Yeah.
There just wasn't the racing in Australia for the mile. So my PB of 4:01 was like at age 38, where I was still running, pretty much close to my PB over 15. But that race I sort of was just behind Nick Simmons. I think I was on his shoulder with 200 to go. It was in Nashville, the music distance festival, and it was a pretty amazing race. I just off Flagstaff, and I was in real good shape and really confident, and just right in the mix in that race. So I think with 200 to go, I was just I'm just so happy to be up there with those guys, and didn't really even think about breaking 4 minutes. And then when I saw the time at the end, it sort of was only just, wasn't far off.
No, yeah, it's got you down as a 4:01.81, mate. There's not much in that. Yeah. 3,000 metres, mate. 8:06.26 in Glendale, 2011.
Yep. So I think I probably ran almost 10 times between 8:06 and 8:10. Yeah. I think I was probably capable running close to 8 minutes or under. I felt like I never quite got my best 3K out, but like 8:06 was a good run. I think I ran 8:06, 8:07 a bunch of times. They're always good meets. That Glendale meet and the New South Wales 3K meet in November every year. Like they were both meets that we'd really target running a good 3K early in the season. Really good distance. I love the 3K. It's sort of, not as long as a 5, sort of uses that 1,500 sort of speed. It was really good. It always was a good indicator that you're ready for a good 1,500 when you can run sort of under 8:10 for me.
Yeah, okay. No, it's definitely moving. 5,000 metres, 14:15.97, Brisbane 07.
Yeah, that was during the winter. They used to have the meet up in Brisbane. I think it was before Noosa Bolt, the week before Noosa Bolt. They sort of set up a 5K there, and I ended up being just stuck on my own time trying that one. I think there was Pete Noel and a couple of others up ahead who might have gone under 14. So, like really good shape again. Like just sort of ticked off those sort of 68-second laps and, felt real good. It would have been good to... I'd never really raced 5Ks that much when I was in my best 1,500 metre shape, and always thought I could have given 14 minutes a good shake. But 5K is a race I sort of do now with Jared as a guide. So I still try to keep that 5K training and 5K fitness. Yeah,
definitely. 10K, mate, 30 minutes, 55 seconds, Sydney, 2012.
Yep. That was on the road, was it?
It's 10K, so yes, it must have been on the road.
Yeah.
Yep. You haven't done too many, you haven't run a 10,000 on the track, or?
No, I've never done one on the track.
Okay.
Always, I will do one. But I'll probably run through 30 minutes on some of those faster road races, Southern to Surf, City to Bay, which are further than 10K, but probably went through 10K sub 30.
Yeah.
I think I ran like a 30-20 here in Canberra just for their road champs, which is all on the bike path. So definitely would have been well and truly under 30 at my best. But just where you race them and what gets recorded as a road PB.
Yeah. Do you ever head up for the City to Surf?
I used to every year.
Okay.
When I first came to Canberra, there used to be a bit of a pilgrimage. All the squad would go up, finish a couple of times. I think my best time City Surf was like 43:20.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I love City Surf. It was a really good race. Tough, but really always had really nice weather and just a good tester, like pretty fast early on, but then obviously those sort of hills in the middle and then the big downhill finish into Bondi. So I really enjoyed running City Surf, and I think it's sort of lost its way a bit since it sort of got taken over by Fairfax, and sort of the elite aspect got lost a bit. But it used to be a race that was on TV and sort of followed the elite guys the whole race, and everyone would target. So it was really good.
Half marathon, 66:10, Brisbane 06.
Yep, I think I ran pretty much the same time 2 years in a row. Or within a second, 66:10 and 66:11 maybe. And they will run quite differently. I think when I ran my PB, I finished sub 9 for the last 3K in a real race with, I think, Glenn Guzzo was his name. And we were just running pretty much the same pace. I ended up dropping him and, running a PB. And then the next year I was going for quite a bit quicker. The conditions weren't quite as good. I think I went out in 30:20 through 10K and just faded on a little bit in the second half. But ended up with pretty much the same time. I really enjoyed those years of running half marathons. Really good fitness during the winter, and I know not quite as intense as the 10K, but when you've done the work, it's quite enjoyable. I found, like the half marathon.
Yep. Oh, so you haven't run a marathon yet?
No, I haven't.
No.
Yeah.
Is it on the list?
Another thing to tick.
Yeah. Is that just due to the
trying
amount
to find the time? Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say the amount of time.
Find the time. It's just something I suppose if I do, I don't want to do half-assed. Like I'd want to run it as well as I could and do the work for it. And I've coached a lot of marathon runners. Like I've got two really good ones at the moment, Millie and Michael Roger, and I know how much work goes into it, and I could run a marathon any day of the week if I wanted to. But running one well is different. Like for me, saying I've run a marathon doesn't mean anything, but like doing one to the best of my ability would be something I want to do.
Yeah, it's not as if
just been thin it in.
Yeah, you can't do one every week, so I can see what you're saying. You want to put in the work and get it done. Yeah,
and I think I've always thought I can run a PB over 1500. Never wanted to give that up, so it's sort of always don't want to compromise that. And I travel a lot as well with the group, so it hasn't happened, but it will happen.
So tomorrow in this high noon, you run the 1500 there?
Yep. So a few of the boys will run there. So I've actually got Jared, Clifford, and Tim Logan up. They got an exemption to leave Melbourne and come up to Canberra. So they did their quarantine for 2 weeks, and now they're living freely. So they're going to race. I'll race. I've got a couple of the para boys, other para boys, Dion Kenzie and Sam Harding racing as well. Another guy in the group, Vince, will race. So it'll be good. We'll probably another guy will probably take us through in 61s or so. I think Jared's keen to run somewhere under 350 or set it up to run there.
Okay.
I
ran
one
what time's that on?
Weeks ago, and 11:30.
11:30. Yeah. I might have to come down to a Facebook live feed on that one. That'd be good.
Oh yeah. I think there's a film crew doing a doco on Jared, so I think they've organised someone to film the race for him. So come down and have a look.
For sure. And what time did you say?
Rolling around and 11:30.
11:30. Yep. Cool. No.
Yeah.
I would have
done your long run by then.
Yeah, exactly. And fed and hydrated, I'll be ready to go, mate. As I mentioned in the intro, mate, you've been at the IS for let's call it 2 decades now. You're sort of in the senior exercise physiologist role, mate. Sort of in that time, have there been sort of any significant shifts, sort of in the way that sort of sports science prepares athletes for competition? Like anything has been any big changes, or it's just more, I guess, ways of finding data and research, or is there been a big shift in the way you guys go about preparing someone for competition that you thought, we probably got that wrong 15 years ago, that we're understanding it more now?
Well, there's been big shifts at AIS. Obviously, the AIS has gone through changes over the years. It's not the same as it was when I first started. When I first started, like sports were based in Canberra. There were scholarships there. There was coaches employed. And our job was to work in with the sports and the coaches and try to develop strategies, research, ideas that would improve performance. So over my time there, obviously I did my PhD in distance running. So a lot of the outcomes from my research I still use. So I did a lot on altitude training. I did a lot about heat acclimation. I did a study on strength training for runners, and that's a pivotal part of my program, getting in the gym, doing plyometrics, doing a lot of speed. So, a lot of those things I still use. I do a lot of work with the race walkers in the lead up for Beijing, London Olympics. And Jared Talon went from someone who was not making teams to winning medals, and a lot of that was due to the work that Brent Valens did with the sports science team at AIS. So getting him better prepared to compete in hot conditions, getting his nutrition right, his feeding strategies, utilising altitude training to the best way. So they're types of things that can take an athlete who's good to the next level. Did a lot of work with swimming over the years. So I worked with Shannon Rollison, John Fowley, Vince Raleigh, some of the top coaches who were at AIS, and a lot of the research and ideas I had were sort of implemented in their program. We had a really good working relationship. We went up to Sierra Nevada, Font Romeu, used altitude training before a lot of their competitions.
Yep.
So
Let's. I know you've done a lot of research on like heat and altitude acclimation. So let's talk about heat first. Like obviously there's findings and that indicate that there's obviously these beneficial physiological responses to training in the heat. Can you just sort of fill us in the facts of what's actually going on there and why that happens?
Yeah, well, I suppose there's two factors. So if you're going to compete in hot conditions and you're an endurance athlete, it's pretty much a must if you want to get the best out of yourself. Obviously, if you're preparing in the southern hemisphere in winter in Canberra, and then you're going to go overseas and compete in 30 plus degrees, you're going to find it really challenging. So that aspect is called heat acclimation or heat acclimatisation. So basically trying to get your body ready to compete in those conditions. So there's two ways of doing it. You can go over to conditions and prepare there, or if you can't, then you have to do what's called acclimation. So use a heat chamber, and that's what we did a lot of with Jared in the lead up to the Olympics. So at least once a week for probably 2 or 3 months, we'd get in the heat chamber and we'd pump the heat up and get his body to adapt. So it allows your body just to be accustomed. So you increase your plasma volume, you adjust your sweat rates so you can be more efficient when you're competing in the heat. You get used to pacing. Like the first time people go in the heat, they try to go at the same pace, and then after a K or two, they're completely cooked because the conditions are completely different and they're not. Their body's not prepared and adjusted. So getting the pacing strategies right. So I think if you're going to compete in hot conditions as an endurance athlete, you've got to prepare well. So that's a lot of the work that we did. And then I suppose other mechanisms is using heat just as a method to improve performance in normal temperatures. And the mechanisms there is, I suppose, heat as an extra stress. So you'll work at a higher heart rate, you work at a higher metabolic rate. So you can, I suppose, get metabolically more work done at lower running speeds. You also become more efficient. So there's sort of mechanisms within the muscle that allow you to be more efficient from exercise in the heat. And you usually have a plasma volume increase, which more plasma around the body means, better aerobic performance usually.
Yeah.
So some of the basic.
Yeah, well, with the heat, like how if you were preparing an athlete to go overseas, obviously the benefits only last so long. With the altitude, we'll discuss soon, but with heat, like how long does that last within the system before it starts to sort of fade out a bit?
I suppose it depends where you go. So like our strategies are basically you prepare up until you leave, and then where you go, you're going to be in the climate you compete in that. So ideally, the environment that you're going to be competing in, and you would have the heat acclimation right up until you go. That's the idea. Otherwise, you do a block, you do a top up before you go, and then you do a final acclimation. So, but like you said, you do lose the adaptations reasonably quickly. So it's not something you would do at the start of the year and then leave it and then compete in the middle of the year without any top up. You sort of want to have that leading into the competition if you can.
Yeah. And I guess the athletes has to understand that he's not going to hit the numbers that he normally would. So keep letting them know that it's okay that you're down a little bit. It's just due to this adaptation that you're going through, and it's going to be very beneficial come race day.
Yeah. And the thing about the heat can be quite taxing. So if you're in there every day with no reprieve, like it can run you down a bit, and you can be like quite fatigued. So I think what we used was basically 1 or 2 sessions a week, and then the rest of the training was in the normal temperature, and basically you can get some high quality and recover, but still sort of build those adaptations. But obviously if you're using that strategy, you just got to do it for longer so you can increase the adaptations a bit.
Well, that could be a good segue into when you talk about spending time in the heat, but going to do your good quality stuff in the cooler weather so you can hit the quality. But with the altitude, you've done a lot of work there as well with, live high, train low, or live high and train high type things. So tell us about
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, so altitude training, the basic premises is to try and improve sea level performance. Like there is, like heat, the ability to altitude acclimatisation for competition at altitude. And I think if you're going to compete at high altitude, you have to do it because it's such a huge reduction in oxygen consumption at altitude that you can negate a bit by doing some work at altitude. But mostly it's used for improving sea level performance. And basically, the basic physiology behind it is when you're at altitude, there's less oxygen in the air. So all sort of processes in the body are impaired. So I think for every 1,000 meters, you've got about a 7% reduction in VO2 max. So if you're up at 3,000 meters, you're going to be 20% down in VO2 max, which is pretty significant for endurance runners. But basically, your body responds to that. So most people would have heard of EPO. So it's like it's a naturally occurring substance in the body, and that's what produces the stimulus to produce more red blood cells. So EPO is turned on when you're in a low oxygen environment, and if you're there for long enough, your body will produce more red blood cells. So you'll increase your VO2 max on return to sea level. So that's, I suppose, the basic physiology of why people go to altitude. But there's a lot of other factors that occur too. So because it's such a anaerobic environment with the lower oxygen, and if you do a lot of good quality, I suppose, lactic tolerance work, what I found is you improve your buffering capacity in those middle distance events. So you become a lot better at tolerating lactic acid and byproducts from anaerobic metabolism because you are in that environment so often up at altitude. So that would be the one benefit, and why I probably use live high, train high a lot more now, just those training benefits of training at altitude. And then there's also, because there's less oxygen around, you become more efficient at using it within the muscle. So at a muscular level, you become more efficient. Efficiency or economy of exercise has been shown to be important in improving performance in distance runners. So it's got a lot of benefits. I think you'd find most of the elite distance runners around the world would use altitude during their career. And what we found, it's not something you just want to use one-off before a competition. It's something you want to structure within your career. So basically, I like using altitude twice every year if I can with my athletes. I think it sort of builds capacity as an athlete cumulatively, as well as like one-off exposures.
That was my next question.
Not all altitude's the same. So you can't go in a gym and run an hour in a hypoxic environment and think you're going to have an increase in VO2 max. Like, it's not going to happen. You need to know the protocols and the time. So
what is the time? How long do you need to be there
it's
for?
Probably 3 weeks minimum, I would have thought. To get the best benefits, 3 or 4 weeks. If I go to a live high, train high camp, I like being 4+ weeks, just so you allow that time to get over the flight, get over those initial few days, and have like 3 really good weeks of training. And depending what you're doing afterwards, having a week easier at the end so you can taper into competition. So a lot of the times when we use altitude, we like racing straight away off altitude. And if you've trained really hard and build up a lot of fatigue and you race straight away, like the race performance cannot be as good. But if you can sort of taper that last week and freshen up a bit, then we found that people fly day one, like off the mountain. It's how you structure it and how you use it. You can also use altitude just as building fitness early on. Just focus on really increasing that aerobic capacity, and then sort of using that momentum throughout the year to train at a better level when you're at down from altitude.
And what's the reason why runners always be taking iron supplements when they're at altitude?
Yeah, so basically to build red blood cells, the center of every red blood cell is an iron molecule. So if you haven't got iron available, you're not going to be able to produce more red blood cells. So, and distance runner, just the nature of it is destructive, like to red blood cells and iron. So quite often distance runners will have low iron levels. So if you go up to altitude with low iron, then basically you're not going to be able to produce red blood cells. So by supplementing with iron, it sort of gives you that stimulus to produce red blood cells in that low oxygen environment.
Okay, so
if you're going to go altitude, we always recommend athletes, like if they're coming into Canberra, to use the altitude house, like have a blood test, see what your ferritin is. If it's the only reason we wouldn't say supplement it, if it's like real high, like there is some disorders like hemochromatosis that having extra iron is like damaging. So you don't want those athletes to be taking iron, but 90+% of the running population, they should be taking iron at altitude to facilitate. And there was a nice meta-analysis done at AIS, and meta-analysis, for people who don't know what it is, it's basically just going through all the research in an area and seeing what are the consensus of those. If you didn't take iron, you pretty much didn't have an increase in hemoglobin mass or red blood cells. And if you did take iron, you did. So it was pretty clear cut that if you're going to put all that effort in to go into an altitude training camp and you're not going to supplement with iron, potentially limiting or negating any results you're going to get in regard to producing red blood cells.
Yeah, that'd suck, 4 weeks of work for nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing with altitude training is, which is pretty common for people who are sort of new to it, is basically train harder than you've ever trained before in increased stressed environments. So basically you get in this overtraining state and your body is not able to get any adaptations because you're overtrained. You're in a sort of catabolic state rather than anabolic state, and your body sort of just doesn't improve. So my recommendation to athletes is basically don't train any more than you have in the, I suppose, average of the 2 months, 6 months leading into altitude. It's not like you want to go there and try to train more or harder than you've ever trained before. Just like the altitude do its thing, train the same, try to have a similar structure. And that can be hard because you're in a training environment where quite often you've got athletes that are better than you, doing more than you, and you want to try and keep up. So as a coach, sort of just understanding that altitude will work its best if the athlete is in an adaptive state. And for that to happen, they don't want to be overtrained. They don't want to be losing lots of weight. So like obviously nutrition becomes important, and you don't want to get sick or injured at altitude. So they're probably the biggest limitations to increasing performance at altitude. So iron, illness, injury.
No, it's interesting. I could see runners easily falling into the trap of, if someone's normally working and then suddenly they get to go on this altitude training camp and train full time, it's going to be normal to want to go out and run more often. So it'd be good to have someone there to say, look, you're just going to have to take it easy for a while and be patient. And that's it. Be patient, and it's something that, as an elite runner, you probably want to try and have into your training program all the time. So, and that's why, a lot of runners go to Falls Creek every year. We go up to Perisher every year. And it's one thing that's good, just to get a good training camp with the rest of the group, away from distractions and all those sort of other conflicting factors. But it is, like, the altitude definitely has an effect. I've done it too often and with too many athletes. If it's done well, it can definitely give you that added performance benefits. And you're a pretty regular visitor to Flagstaff, as you mentioned. Sort of pretty much go there a lot. Why do you choose Flagstaff over Boulder?
It's a few reasons. So back in 2003. So it was actually the year before I had all my breakthroughs. I went to Flagstaff with Dick Telford, Michael Shelley, Andrew O'Neill, Lisa Corrigan, and I just felt something different after going to there. It was just, And then obviously the following years I ran all my PBs and consistently did. But Flagstaff's like Canberra. Like there's pine forests. Canberra hasn't really got pine forests anymore since fires. But there's trails everywhere. It's on a plateau, so you're not up and down the mountains. So, if you've been to Perisher or Falls Creek, it's like finding it's hilly. Whereas Flagstaff's not. Flagstaff's just like a town on a plateau. It's at 2,200 meters, which from all the research that sort of I've done and seen is almost like the optimal altitude to train at.
Okay.
Not too high, so you're impaired too much, but high enough that you're really maximizing those red cell benefits. So I went there in 2003, and it was just an awesome place for distance running. So I didn't go there afterwards. So we did a lot of work in Perisher, as I said, with Dick and AIS, and had some really good results. And obviously used the AIS altitude house a lot as well. So the live high, train low, which we used every year. So they were at 2 forms of altitude. But in, when would it have been, 2012, I think I went to Kenya. So, as part of my professional development, my boss, Chris Gore, thought it would be a really good thing for me to go over to E10 and just train in with the Kenyans and just experience it firsthand. And just after going there, I just thought natural altitude over 2,000 meters is the best form of altitude training. Those training adaptations that you can't get from the live high, train low. And then at the end of that year, I started coaching Michael Roger. There was still scholarships at AIS, so I was supported AIS coach at the time, looking after Michael. They had a budget, and basically, what's the best way I could prepare Michael to go to the 2013 World Champs, and I thought Flagstaff's the way to go. It's perfect altitude. It's great running. And I've been every year since. So I've taken a group of athletes to Flagstaff every year since 2013, and pretty much always have great results from it.
Okay.
We've done some research. So I had a PhD student, Vish Sharma, who did his PhD under me, and I did a lot of his studies up at Flagstaff, and really tried to look at how do we train better at altitude to maximize the adaptations. So, really good PhD. Probably crystallized a lot of my thoughts on how to train at altitude, how to use some lower altitude training venues. And that's the other beauty. With Flagstaff, within an hour, you can get down to 900 meters. You can go up to 2,800 meters. There's tracks at 2,200 meters. So.
Do you ever run into the...
I wouldn't even consider going to Boulder. Boulder's like 1,600 meters as well, so 600 meters lower. Obviously it's got some nice trails, but
Well, what's the distance between those two towns? Like a couple of hour drive, or is it longer than that?
More than that.
Okay.
More than that. I think it's probably 5 or 6 hours to New Mexico. So Boulder would be a fair way. No, you have to fly, but I suppose from Australia you go in through LA or San Fran or something, and then you fly into one of the venues. So.
And the Ingebrigtsen brothers always are at Flagstaff. Do you hang out with those guys at the pub or what?
No. We obviously there's a lot of good athletes there. So look at me at Flagstaff, they have a Sunday long run, which is pretty much open to everyone. So it's pretty much a mixing pot where everyone goes in. You get to run with a lot of good guys, and but I just try to get my own thing done. Obviously it's nice to learn from other people, but I don't get overly starstruck just because Mo Farah's there, and I know some of the athletes do, but I suppose it's just showing how good Flagstaff is a training venue, isn't it? That all the athletes go there.
So how many tracks are there in Flagstaff for you guys to choose from?
So there's the university's got that one, so NAU, and then there's probably 3 or 4 high school tracks that you can access. Like, it can be hard depending on the year, but then there's another track down in Sedona, which is about 12 or 1,300 meters altitude, so quite a bit lower. So quite often we'll go down there for a bit of extra quality in our training, and a lot of people use that. And then there's another track down at Cottonwood at about 1,000 meters, which we've used as well. So you've got options of 1,000, 12, 1,300 or 2,200 up at Flagstaff as tracks. You could also go right down close to sea level at Phoenix if you want to drive a couple of hours, probably only 2 and a bit hours to Phoenix. So,
are you always staying at the same accommodation when you go there?
We had one place that we stayed for quite a few years in a row, but yeah, it depends on the group size to where we stay. So that's something I just always organise. Yeah, either through Airbnb or home away or like that one house. I sort of had the owner's contact details, so you'd always sort of check in what we were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was part of an AA study probably 20 years ago, maybe when you just turned up, but that was to find out why some athletes benefit more from altitude training than others. What's come out of that over the last couple of decades? Is that still holds true, or?
Oh, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think there was a theory around that there's responders and non-responders, but like I think all those things we talked about earlier is you limit your response by preparing well. So if you know what goes into adaptation and what you need to do to have a good altitude training camp, I think you'll improve. And I think if you get things wrong, then you won't improve. So I think just because you didn't improve one time doesn't mean you're not going to improve again. You sort of work out why it is. Like I've seen people who didn't improve, but they got sick for a week where in altitude, so they lost 5 or 6 kilos, or they didn't iron supplement. Like that, you can probably explain why.
Yeah. Okay.
So in my mind, it's not an issue. Like basically, there's not some people that are going to get more out of it, and some people are going to get nothing. I think everyone can get like some good adaptations from altitude. There's still some research going on about different factors allowing some people to respond better, but I don't think anyone's not going to get a good effect if they do it well.
Yeah. It might have been a financial decision if they, spend a lot of money to send, 12 people to altitude for 6-8 weeks. And it was more about, which ones do we send? Maybe it's a waste of time sending, Joe, Dick and Harry type thing. And so I guess they probably just wanted to make sure that was all sweet. Yeah.
I've never taken anyone up who hasn't had benefit from it, so I wouldn't ever question that. And I remember chatting with coaches about it before, and most of the time it's people just going in blind and like what we talked about, just training way too hard and not getting the responses and racing really bad afterwards because they're so overtrained from the extra stress of altitude and basically thinking how bad it was. And it's the same with anything. If you have a really bad experience first time up, you're probably relatively unlikely to do it again unless you've got the right people around you.
Mate, let's talk about strength and conditioning. I know it's obviously a big deal, and you're obviously in your line of work, but just personally big firm believer and strong advocate of it. Just thinking about distance running and sort of stripping it down a bit, what should strength and condition actually sort of consist of for a distance runner?
So I think there's a few key aspects. I think one of the first things strength and conditioning do is just make you better recruiting the right muscles. So obviously your glutes, your hammies are your big power generators, and if you're not recruiting those properly, you're going to be putting a lot of extra stress on other muscles and increasing the risk of injury. So I think it allows you to recruit and get strong in the right areas. It can create greater symmetry in running. So if you're doing like strength conditioning properly and you're doing like single-sided stuff, you become strong and symmetrical while you're running. It also improves your efficiency, I find. So basically you're more efficient on the ground. If you're doing a lot of good S&C, some plyometric type work, so you're working on that stress shortening cycle and improving the elastic energy return. So I think you can get more out of every step, more energy for free as it sort of as it goes. I think it just makes you more resilient. You just become stronger, you become more robust, and you can get through training at a higher level. So I found a good strength and conditioning program just makes running faster, easier. You're better on the ground.
And what does that actually consist of? Is that like doing 3 sets of heavy weights, 3 sets of 6 barbell in the gym, or you're talking strength like with actually doing plyometric work or doing drill work, or is it specific doing the
a bit of all of it. So it depends on the athlete. So if you're a marathon runner, you're probably not going to do as much of the heavy lifting as I would with the distance runners, but helped it over the years. So I suppose it started back in the early 2000s when I did a research project looking at the effectiveness of plyometric training on distance runners. We had some good positive effects, and that was probably my introduction into the importance of S&C into distance running.
Yep.
And I think the other thing is it's not just an add-on. It's got to have its set place in a training program. So when we do gym, we do it fresh. Like, it's not on the back of a run. It's not replace. It's not replace the session. So my volume would probably be a bit low because I put 2 hour strength conditioning sessions in that are more important than going for an extra run.
Yeah.
So I normally always start with drills, just trying to get that coordination, that recruitment. We do some toe walks, heel walks, lunges, high knee walks, bum kicks, skips, crab walks, all those sort of things, trying to work on all the different muscles for running. And it sort of gets you sort of loose and ready for the gym and activated.
So just using mini bands and that? TheraBand type work.
Yeah, for the crab walks. For the other ones, just using nothing. Lunges, you can use some weights if you want with a twist. But usually as a warm up, we no bands apart from the crab walks, which we do use bands with.
That's after a bit of a jog.
Usually, no, that's a warm up. Just some walking drills, low grade plyometric drills. And then usually a few easy plyometrics. So the plyometrics I sort of will incorporate. I used to do set plyometric sessions where it'd just be a plyometric base. I usually will put a few in after the warm up and then maybe a few in at the end of the session before we sprint, sort of mix it up. And the plyometric exercise will be stuff like high skips, single leg hops, like max distance, bounding, tuck jumps into a standing broad jump, box jumps, step jumps, a number of different things, but all trying to work on specific running based muscles and that elastic energy return. I think they're great with just coordination and just making you just better feel for running.
With the single leg hops, it always made sense to me because every time we run, we always just land on one leg. So it always made sense.
That's right.
Why don't I ever see people doing it? So I'm glad you said that you do that. And then I was thinking, when you're doing it, is it more controlled, just trying to hit the ground and powerful coming up? Are you not trying to do it fast, or are you trying to do it fast, or?
Got a few different ways. So sometimes we try to do it fast, like small single leg hops, just trying to get that ping, bang, 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 bang.
Yep.
And the other times it's trying max distance. Obviously you got to be controlled and you got to get that, but you're just trying to hit the ground and explode off. And and the same with bounding. You're trying to come down, hit the ground, and really drive like you are in running, generate force off the ground. So it's got a lot of overlap with force generation and speed in running. So I think a good plyometric training programs and specific drills will make you a lot better at sprinting, faster, more efficient, better at generating power off the ground.
Yeah. And should you would you just work one side until you fatigue and then just pop to the other leg straight into it, or you just sort of work one?
If we're doing the fast ones, we do, but if you're doing 10 maximal hops, you probably can't just pop to the other side. You need a bit of recovery just so you can do it properly. We can talk about energy systems, but it's basically you got about 6 seconds for that sort of ATP energy system. So if you're doing them maximally, you can't just keep doing them continuous. You got to have the right recovery.
Yep. Okay.
And then usually the next part of the warm-ups, we get the med ball out, somewhere between 2 and 5 kilos, depending on who it is, and we do some throw downs into the ground, and then we do some max throws into the air, just trying to get that triple extension, getting the glutes working, getting the hammies working. And then from there, we usually go into a couple of different lifts, which is trying to really get that glute hammy recruitment and strength. And for a distance runner, it might just be squats, reverse lunges, box step-ups, split squats, those type of things. Which I do for my middle distance runners as well. But we also go into some more of the power lifting. So the cleans, the snatches, push press, those type of things. So
basically the longer the distance you're running, the less of that real explosive plyometric work you should be doing.
Yeah, more of that recruitment and just efficiency and strength. Yeah. And probably not as much. That type of thing can be the extra thing that can push you over the edge as well. I I know Rhodes is always sore for when he's doing big Ks, and he's not going to be able to do maximal hops on a Mondo track like we do. So it's knowing the athlete and knowing what they need, but definitely he needs to do some squats, he needs to do some single leg stuff, he needs to do some adductor work. Usually two or three exercises on the platform, and then we do a bit of like hip flexor, hamstring focused stuff. I don't know if you've heard of the Russian hamstring, but I think they're like awesome for injury prevention, just that upper hamstring, lower hamstring strength. So you're basically sort of kneeling with your like feet locked in, and you're just trying to go down to flat. So you're using those hamstrings, like they rip a bit. But
I've seen that. Like I've seen maybe someone holding someone's ankles and they just sort of lower themselves down to the ground. Yeah.
And it's just the eccentric phase you need. You don't need to try to come back up. So usually we just set it up on a lat pull down machine or something where you can lock your ankles in and then have a bench out in front. You can lower yourself to the bench and then just push yourself back up. 3 or 4 sets of 5. Once or twice a week, it just gets the hammies real strong.
And I hear a lot, it may be more with tendon rehabilitation to loading them up heavy, but with normal strength and conditioning, should the guys be going in there just doing 3 sets of 8s and 12s, or should they be doing every now and then go in there and just do a couple of sets of, where they can do 4 or 5 reps, or that's always the question that comes up.
If you're going to do big reps, you might as well just run. I think if you're going to do gym, it's got to be heavy enough for you, and I reckon 4 sets of 5s normally what I go from lifting. It's a weight that you can do sort of 4 sets of 5. For distance runners, like if you can squat your body weight, you're probably all right. For middle distance runners, you probably want to do a little bit more. But that's sort of a good goal, deadlifting and squatting your body weight, and then obviously doing single leg stuff like split squats or Bulgarian squats. It's less weight because you're on one side, but you want to make it meaningful. So 4 sets of 5, you're trying to get some strength gains, you're trying to get some recruitment. And then another thing that sort of actually Dane Verway sort of showed me in Flagstaff, he's come over with us a few times, is just some like real heavy stuff on the Achilles. So on the leg press machine and doing some slow controlled toe up, back, even heavier holds, just trying to push out a real heavy weight. So like I might do 200, I don't know what the plate is, but maybe 200, 250 kilos, just sort of holding one leg, just trying to get a lot of load through the Achilles. And I found that's been real good for, just Achilles strength. And I did have a sore Achilles for about 15 months, but I seem to have worked through that. I think exercise like that have helped. And then glute bridging, single leg glute bridging is real good. We do sort of pulses on the calf as well. And for those, they're probably lightweight and lots. So that's sort of that repetitive sort of tendon loading. So 120 pulses, 50 glute bridges, that type of thing. So that's probably what we'll go to after the lifting, those type of exercises. And then usually always finish with a bit of speed. Probably a few more plyometric exercises, so like the straight leg bounds, the bent knee bounds, the hops and stuff I was talking about. So maybe a couple of those, and then we do some max sprinting, and it'll either be no weight or we'll do some sled pushes just to try and get even more recruitment and power, or resisted band sprinting. We always finish that gym with some fast running. And just trying to get people to sprint right, like not just trying to force it, trying to feel the ground, get that sort of heel kicking back and generating force. That's usually our structure of gym, how I've sort of developed it over the years.
And
twice a week,
I was going to say twice a week, And obviously we've got the nice grass track out there at Stromlo. Would it be, advantageous to do that barefoot sometimes, just to get that? I mean, it just seems, why do we always be running? All my kids always say, can't I wear bare feet at the cross country championships? And I say, I wish you could, because they always say how much better it feels. And I say, it's unfortunate you can't, because when I run in bare feet, it just feels fantastic too.
I love sprinting barefoot too. So we do all our drills barefoot. So to start every gym session, I always get them to take their shoes off, and I don't care if it's Mondo or grass, whatever, we do it barefoot. When we do plyometrics up at the track, we always do our plyometrics on the grass barefoot. Quite often we will do some running barefoot, depending on the runner and their sort of history. But I've done a lot of sort of warm downs barefoot over the years, and I think it just gives you more strength within that long leg and foot to be able to handle the loads of running. So you don't have to do all your running barefoot. You don't have to get a pair of Vibrams, but like a little bit of that is good. And it's just getting you're stronger. It's getting like you're more aware of the ground, how to feel the ground, and like you said, like it just feels so good to sprint barefoot, like on the grass.
Yeah, you actually feel like a sprinter. It's like it automatically puts your body in the right position, and you spend less time on the ground, and everything about it's positive. But yeah, obviously, a lot of people have hurt themselves by doing too much too soon, so you got to be smart about it, like everything. But yeah, I mean, maybe just once or twice a week after an easy run, just take the shoes off and run a couple of laps.
Right. Yeah. And in the gym, like definitely, I think do all your drills barefoot. Like you get so much more out of it, and it's harder, like for a start, because you've got to use your foot to control and like that strength in the ankle. So
yeah, for sure, mate. I've got a question here from a patron of the podcast, Jason Keane from Sydney. Thanks for your support, Jason, mate. Much appreciated. So Jason asks, actually, I'll add a bit of context to this. He's 51 years old, and last year he ran 1:15:34 for the Sydney Half at Homebush and 2:48 for the Melbourne Marathon. So at the age of 51 is pretty good. I know you'll respect that. I know you're sort of big on not using your age as a ceiling for your abilities. It's more about putting the hard work in, and you can still perform. And obviously Jason's proved that. So yeah, for sure.
If you make it a barrier, it will be. If you don't think
exactly.
about it, then
I don't know if you're like me, just tell them, and I'm 48 now, but when I tell a line, I don't look around and think about how old people are. To me, they're just another competitor. So, I mean,
as soon as you start thinking like that, you're sort of probably beaten, aren't you? You sort of got to, And I know now, like I'm doing sessions better than I was when I was 20, early 20s. And to me, that suggests that I should be able to run as fast as when I'm early 20s. And I know a lot of things go into racing and motivation and all those type of things. But if you're doing it in training, you're still able to get the work out. There's no reason you shouldn't be able to run as fast.
For sure. Mate, so Jason asks, what are the best ways of improving running economy for middle distance runners, particularly for over the 50 category, who already have a good aerobic base? Best ways for improving the running economy. So let's target towards him for the over 50s.
So I think, like definitely as you get older, like strength condition becomes more important. And we talked a bit about like the mechanisms of how it can improve running economy. So if you're not doing any S&C, like I'd say that'd be one thing you really want to target.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think runners find it so hard to drop that easy run and get in the gym?
I suppose it's just, it's just what's been done, isn't it? Like it's basically, and I suppose what makes sense to them, isn't it? Like, most of your improvements are going to come from running more. Like, obviously, if you do in the gym and you're not running at all, you're not going to improve. So most of your improvements coming from running, and that's what people want to do. Like, they just, so sometimes you've got to take a step back logically to think, if I run a bit less, it's probably going to be better for me. If I structure it better, my training week, it's going to be better for me. If I don't nail myself every time I'm doing a session, it's probably going to be better for me. But intuitively, you don't think that. You want the confidence of going as hard as you can and pushing better than you've done before. So, periodization becomes critical, I think, and especially for like the older athletes. So I think being robust so you can tolerate loads, because obviously one way of improving running economy is running more. Like obviously if you can run a bit more, you're going to become more efficient.
By not breaking down with injury.
So a good base to be able to do that. Some of those other things we've talked about just to become more efficient. So some of that barefoot stuff in a warm down, some of the drills barefoot are all good. So looking at your mechanics, like if your mechanics can be fixed, then try and fix them and try to fix them in different ways. So with some S&C, if you're sort of lacking glute activation, some ankle strength work if you're lacking that. So I think that's the best way to improve running economy, is obviously being stronger to be able to tolerate a bit more running. Another thing we've used over the years is some downhill running, like some short periods of downhill running. So maybe twice a week for 3 weeks, where we do probably 3Ks worth of like some steep downhill running. So 10% type grade at pretty decent speed, break up into intervals. If you can get driven back up the hill, it's a lot easier. You can do sort of 6x500, 3x K, 2x1500, like whatever. The thing about the downhill running is like it can be that extra stress that people sort of worried about that's going to tip them over if they're sort of on edge. But if you do it properly, you're probably getting a little bit sore for the first couple. But once you learn how to run downhill,
I think
the benefits
almost
outweigh a good S&C program.
Yeah, that eccentric loading. I mean, I did a bit of downhill running because I was doing a race that had a lot of downhill in it, and it hurts. And I just had to remind myself, a couple of sessions in, my body will adapt and I'll get used to it.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's amazing how many people don't know actually how to run down a hill properly.
That's right. Yeah.
And they overstride and they break.
A lot, your quads. Yeah, that's right. And you run properly, and you're getting your foot under your body.
Exactly.
And feeling the ground. So I actually broke the world record for 1500, and in one of the research projects, like we sort of, I know normally we're just running sub 3 minute K pace, but like for the last 1500, we thought we'd have a bit of a crack, and I think I ran 3:23, like 1500 meters downhill. So if you get used to how to run downhill, like you can get a little bit of like speed. Over speed work.
And going back to the City to Surf, that's where you can see a lot of people last 2Ks downhill and they just suddenly put the brakes on. You go flying past them, you go, come on boys, you've worked your ass off for 12K, don't slow down now. But it's more the fact that they're just not in the right position.
So there's a few things you can work on, but I think just being consistent is probably going to be the key. And if that consistency is improved by just getting a bit stronger, then all those little things will help, I think.
I was thinking, and as an example, would you, like with a 30-year-old runner who's sort of got a consistent running history, and just say that he's the same ability in a marathon as a 50-year-old, would they be doing different strength and conditioning programs, wouldn't they? Do you have to take a 50-year-old and a 30-year-old differently? Because it becomes, they say as we age, it becomes more important.
It becomes more important, but if neither of them were doing anything, I think you would probably try to build them up in the same sort of way. I don't think you'd be necessarily treating them any differently. I think the general concepts are the same. Like, you're trying to get stronger in the right muscles, you're trying to get more symmetrical, you're trying to get more efficient, you're trying to get more elastic energy return. And obviously you lose some of those things with age, so I think that's why it becomes more important. But I think benefits for a 30-year-old are still there.
What about hills, mate? Do you run a lot of hills in your total weekly volume, or do specific hill intervals just to get that specific strength that you get?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Hills are a big part of the program. I think the middle distance running is like key, like just that strength you can get up hills, that sort of anaerobic sort of like finishing, like from yourself when you do some steep hills really hard, like that sort of finishing sort of it just replicates the end of an 800, 1500 so well. So we do a lot of different type of hills. Like we'll do the shorter hills where they're more anaerobic sort of focus, where you're trying to get that real recruitment power and a bit of lactic. We do sort of longer sort of strength hills, so 3-minute hills. We do sort of 90-second hills. We do surges where we just run over the hills, and we might just run a bit harder up the hills and sort of float the rest of it. Hills are great. They get you strong. Middle distance runners, they help with that sort of finishing strength when you're like fighting fatigue. I try to never be too far away. Like, I don't structure it into the program in a set way, but I wouldn't have thought there'd be more than 3 weeks where we would have a specific hill session in the program.
Yep. I mean, we're pretty lucky here in Canberra. We've got lots of trails to run on, and the grass track. But would you sort of prescribe to most distance runners, generally a lot of them are running on bike paths and roads and that, to try to get onto the soft stuff at least a couple of times a week?
Yeah, a lot of people get a bit over cautious about running on hard surface and thinking they have to get off. I think mixed terrain is the best for any runner. I think you don't want to be scared of running on the bike path, and you don't want to avoid running on the trails. Mixed terrain training is great. The trails in Canberra are so good, so you should be trying to get onto the trails as often as you can. I think foot strength as well. Like, I grew up in Victoria, country Victoria, and just had heaps of forest to run on. I think it just gets you stronger, and your ankles and your feet. There's no way I could roll my ankle now. And if you're running everything on pavement, you're not building that sort of lateral strength in your legs and your ankles. So, I've always said mixed terrain is the way to go. Try get on grass, try get on the trails, get on the bike path, get on the road. Mix it up.
Yeah.
And the trails are so good of getting that strength. So if you don't do a specific hill session, your Sunday long run through the hills is like strength.
Yep.
Like you're running through the hills, and usually once you get going, your long run is your fastest run of the week anyway, just because the nature of the duration. So definitely, get out on the trails where you can. Some people haven't got any trails to run on, so if you're in somewhere like Canberra, like find them out and mix it up.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I do all my running on trails just because I love being out there amongst the roos and the hills and away from everybody. So, but I might put this past you because they always say like maybe 4 weeks or 5 weeks into a road race or a marathon where I know I'm going to be running on the road, I'll generally start doing some workouts on the roads because they say there's like a different training stimulus in the muscle that you got to get it used to. Is that true?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Okay. The biggest thing that's going to hold you back in a marathon is like muscle damage in the second half, cramping. Like Rogues has been battling. I don't think he's had one yet where he hasn't cramped up, and basically he's lost minutes at the end of the marathon just by like cramping in the hammies and the quads, and getting it right and doing a lot of hard training on the road. And the preparation is one of the things you need to do. You can't veer away from, I think.
Yeah. Yep. Is that just because there's more muscle damage when you're running on that road? There's more that microfiber tears going on, and okay. Yeah. Cool.
More give on the trails, and so you need to become so hard to run like a marathon, like at your best. Like I think you get through a marathon if you're just doing a sub maximally, but if you want to put it on the line and get the best out of yourself. You've got to do those hard sessions, those hard marathon sessions on the hard surface.
Yeah. So that you're talking about the fast-paced stuff because that extra ground force you actually have to need to propel yourself. Yeah, so you can't just go doing easy runs on the hard stuff. You got to do your fast stuff. Yeah.
Marathon pace stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Like I've trained with a lot of runners over the years. But I remember Scotty Westcott. One session he used to always go on about in his marathon preps was. He'd do 30Ks steady out of Stromlo through the trails, and then he'd roll down to Lake Burley Griffin and go as hard as he could for 6K on the road when he's like fatigued, got some muscle damage, just to sort of trying to simulate that marathon. And we use West Basin a lot, like a lot of the marathon runners in Canberra.
Mate, you're sort of coaching at a pretty, you got a pretty high level squad going at the moment, sort of Tokyo 2021 on the radar there, mate. That includes, as you mentioned, Jared Clifford, the 1,500 and 5,000 metre world champion, the reigning world champion there, from the Para Worlds in Dubai last year. Mate, just tell us about that night where yourself and his good mate Tim Logan paced him through that 5,000 metre, picking up that gold. I mean, you're his coach, but, his mate and his, and his guide, that must have been an incredible night.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was so good. He'd won the 1,500 metre a week before, and that was so exciting in itself because I've worked with Jared from when he was a development athlete. Looked like he was about 7 when he came to Canberra the first time, and just seeing his progression's been amazing. So that 1,500 was pretty special. But the 5K was just another level. Like normally, like I've been a team coach for able body and para at Olympics, World Champs, Paralympics. And normally you warm up the athlete, you take them to the call room, and then you walk in the stands, and it's up to them. Obviously, you've done everything you can. You sort of watch. But with Jared, we're into the call room together. I'm seeing him prepare. We're doing it as a team. So it was a totally different feeling than I've ever had before as a coach. Obviously, I've been as an athlete into that call room experience many times, but being there for his result and being an important factor of that result was another level of satisfaction. And I just remember during the race sort of had a few different plans, but basically I just navigated him into second place. The pace was slow for us, like we're running probably 3 minute 3:05K pace early on, so we were just cruising, and I just knew he had it won. Like I just put him in position, kept him there. There's a little bit of a move, just got him on it. And when I sort of handed off to Tim, I could just sense how he's running. Like, we've guided a few races together, and he's always sort of struggled. By the sort of end of the time we hand over, it's almost like he's just been hanging on with Tim. But this time he was just like fluent. He was easy, and I just knew there was no one who was going to beat him in the second half. So it was a pretty amazing feeling. But it was still on in the last lap. Like, I was confident he was going to do it, but it's still being part of that, and having the three of us like win the gold medal was, so special. Like, his parents were there too. All the rest of the team who's been on the journey, so Rogues, Dion, were there as well. So it was amazing. That whole championship was so amazing the whole year. Like, Rogues won his first gold medal in London as well in the marathon, and then backed up with a silver. It was pretty special as a coach to be part of those athletes and achieve those heights that they sort of dreamed of.
And Dion got a silver too, didn't he?
Dion got a bronze.
Did he? Okay, yeah.
He got a gold in London like 2 years before, which was a pretty amazing night too. But he didn't have the best lead up. He was going probably better than the bronze. He probably should have got silver. Canadian guy who sort of came into his class as an able-bodied athlete, like was a acquired CP. It was always going to be hard to beat, and Dion had quite a few problems in the lead up with his hammy, so his preparation was a bit hampered, so he did well to get the bronze. And he's flying this.
Awesome. Well, what happened with Rogues? There was something going on.
4 gold medals if Tokyo goes ahead.
Sorry, I just lost you for a bit there, mate. That's why I spoke over you. But the Rogues. Something happened with his silver medal. He wasn't sure if he got it. There was a.
It was a bit ridiculous, really. It was. He led the whole race. We thought with his marathon strength, there's a few good guys there who have always beaten him in the last lap kick. So it's like, make it honest. If someone's good enough to beat you, they'll beat you. So he took it on. It was probably sort of like low 350, sub 350 type pace. And there was, I think, 4 or 5 of them in the last lap. And he has given up a couple of times when he's been beaten at the World Championship in the 15. But he was fighting for everything. He dodged in between one guy. Another guy tried to go around and he held his spot, didn't make any contact, and then they DQ'd him, like for impeding someone. But he didn't veer from his line for the whole race, and the only time was when he sort of ducked in between 2 people, like in traffic, which was a good move. So we were. And it went on for ages and ages, and I thought, like, we watched the footage, and it's like, this, why are you going to get DQ'd? So
was it coming from someone else on the track, like another athlete, or was that from the officials that were?
I'm not even sure how it came, but I think it was the officials, and I think they were just strong on something. But at the end of the day, like, Andrew Fakeney, who's like really good in that situation, made them see sense, and they reinstated him with his silver. And it was good because he ran such a good race. Obviously, he won the gold in the marathon. Wasn't his main race, but he won a double gold, and he fought hard for that silver. So to have it taken away from him for that brief time was, it was pretty bad. And Jared obviously was on cloud 9 after winning his gold medal. So just, managing those emotions was, a bit testing. But at the end of the day, it was finished really well.
Yeah. And you mentioned being a guide, you and Tim, you guys get a gold medal as well. Is that right?
It's a little bit of a contentious issue. So
okay,
that's what we thought. Like, we're considered as athletes. We're on the program. We're part of the Australian team. We're Paralympians. If Tokyo goes ahead, but for the World Champs. But that's what we thought. But in the medal presentation, the official said, no, the rules are if there's one guide, they get a gold medal. If there's multiple guides, neither of you get a gold medal. Which, I don't quite understand, because a 5K states you'll have 2 guides, and it's because of the distance. And marathon, I think you can have 4 guides. So if you can have 2, why would you have 1? Obviously, at Jared's level, you're going to have a pretty good athlete to guide him for the whole 5K. So we use 2, and basically I go first, so I can set up the tactics and talk to him and position him, and then Tim goes last. and it's how it works, and it's how Jared runs his best times. To me, it doesn't matter. Like the gold medals for Jared, and like I'm there as his guide and his coach and helping make it happen. Obviously, it'd be nice to be on the podium and have a gold medal to sort of remember it by. And so we'll see what happens. They might change it for Tokyo, but at Dubai, they didn't have medals for the guides.
And Tim gets, like you said, he's part of the team, so he gets all the funding from AA and all the rest of it?
Yep.
Oh, that's good.
Yep. So, it's a bit of a tricky situation, like with my role as coach and working at AIS, because both of us should be classified as the same as Jared, so podium level athlete on NAS. So, anyway, Tim's fully funded. He gets the same level of funding as Jared. And I get sort of NAS funding at a service level at the AIS. So, can get sports medicine, physio, massage, all that sort of support. And obviously the coach. I do all the S&C programs and train with them as well. So Tim is, the same as Jared and Rogues and Dion and Sam Harding. Like, he's on the radar as a para-athlete as Jared's guide.
No, that's fantastic. Mate, thanks so much, Philo, mate. It's giving up your time on a Saturday afternoon. All that information is going to be fantastic, mate, to digest it all, and I'm sure the listeners are going to get a lot out of that. Mate, all the best with your own personal training and racing goals, and we're all sort of extremely looking forward to Tokyo Olympics and the Paralympics. See how they're all going, including the Saunders stable, mate. See how all your runners go. Is Keely Small? Is she hoping to?
I was just gonna mention, like, we talked about the para guys. So obviously we mentioned Dion, Jared, Rogues and Tim, and there's also another guy, Sam Harding, who is like a great story as well. I won't go on too long, but Sam, I got glandular fever at London when he was an 800 metre runner and couldn't compete, and he's never made a team since. He transitioned to 400, but then he went across to me in about 2015, and he's actually done 2 qualifiers for Tokyo. He actually ran 3:53 the day after Jared won his gold medal on the 1500 and Rogues won his silver. I reckon the squad was almost happier for Sam getting that time than they were for the medals. Like, just how much he puts in, how good he is for the squad. So so he should be there in Jared's class as well in the 1500.
Okay.
And the able-bodied side, we've got Keely Small in the 800 or 1500. She's had an awesome winter, so I think she's going to raise some eyebrows over 1500 in the next year or two. She ran a 16 flat 5K just at the last high noon meet on her own.
So she's run the qualifier for the 8 and the 15 for Tokyo? Or?
No, she hasn't.
Okay.
No.
Yep.
And who knows how the qualifier is going to go. It's all based, unless you do the auto, which is 159.5 or 159.7. I don't think the auto's out of her reach in either the 8 or 15 if we get good quality racing back. So, she's a pleasure to work with, super talented athlete. Like, sky's the limit for her. Like, as fast as any female distance run I've ever seen, and it's got an aerobic capacity too. So we've just been patient with Keely, keep building her up. But what I've seen this year is like she's going to go to the next level very shortly.
Exciting.
Really exciting, and just such a good member of the squad. Everyone sort of thrives after everyone's results. And the other two I've got who both aren't in Canberra at the moment. Millie Clark, marathon runner. So she's actually run an auto of 2:28, but she's the 4th ranked. So she needs to go 2:26.15 or 20 to get that 3rd spot. I think Ella Pashley's the 3rd spot, but she's running London. So we're pretty much aiming to try to get under 2:26 for Millie when she gets a chance to run again. Awesome athlete, Millie. She's just so tough, does it all on her own. She's in the shape of her life at the moment. Talking about some of those hard marathon sessions on the road, we could spend another hour talking about some of the stuff she does and the shape she's in. But she hopefully will be there too if she gets an opportunity. And then Paige Campbell in the steeplechase, who, if they keep the qualification the way it is, I think she'll be on the team. If they change it, then she just has to run the qualifier, the roll down. But she's had a good winter as well, in great shape. So I think she'll be there in the steeplechase, maybe the 5K.
That's awesome.
We've got.
And Rogues will be running the marathon, will he? Just the marathon?
Yeah, just the marathon. He can do both. The 1500's on maybe a week before the marathon, but I just don't want to detract the focus on the marathon and potentially pull up real sore after a hard 1500 that he hasn't really been hardened to run. So it's just a bit of a risk with him. Like he's got a bit of osteitis pubis at the moment, which we're managing, but he's streets ahead in his class in the marathon, and he hits the start line in any sort of shape, he's going to win the gold medal. So, which he's never done at the Paralympics. This is his fourth one. So, we'll just concentrate on the marathon.
No, it's exciting, mate. I'm doing my Hail Marys every night, mate, hoping all this happens next year, but it's such an uncertain world at the moment.
I know.
But, it's not so much for me, obviously. It's just for the athletes, all the work they've put in, and I just hope like hell it goes ahead.
Yeah, that's right. It's tough managing like all the emotions associated, because we were pretty much set and ready to go for Tokyo this year. I couldn't have seen Jared and Rogues not winning gold medals, and for it to be postponed, it's massive for those. It's sort of the prime of their career, and trying to digest it all. But you just got to look at the bigger scheme, and you got to do what's in your control, and that's the way I've just tried to manage it. Just try to use this as 12 months to be even better, and all the athletes are becoming better. Tokyo goes ahead next year. We'll kill it.
It'll probably be the most special Olympics ever for all that's happened, mate. So to be part of it, it'll just be incredible. Mate. Thank you once again, Philo. I really appreciate that, mate.
No worries. Thanks for having me. Been good chatting.
No, it's been awesome, mate.
It's been my passion for the last, as you said, 2 decades now, probably.
It's good having people like you around that so absorbed into the sport, and also doing all the research on the side and getting the best out of the athletes, and getting the best out of yourself. You know what I mean? I don't know. Am I allowed to ask a guy his age? I think you're allowed to, aren't you? 44?
Yeah, 43. and 44 at the end of the year,
And you're still running pretty quick. Like, what are you running your 1500s in at the moment?
I ran 345 a couple of years ago. I'd like to think I'm still in that sort of 345, 350 shape once racing starts up again.
That's it. So you've probably, dropped 10 seconds in 10 or 15 years at the most, or?
Yeah, at the most. I reckon I can still give that PB a shake. Get everything right.
Yeah, that's awesome, mate. Live the dream, mate. Well, you're putting in the work, so that's fantastic. All right, Philo, mate. Thank you once again.
All right. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Good chatting. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, mate.